Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 21. Big Bro Xiaochun. The 10,000 Medicines Pavilion was one of the most lively locations on Fragrant Cloud Peak. Virtually every day, crowds of outer sect disciples came and went. One reason was because of the 10 stone steles, and the other reason was because of the 10,000 Medicines Pavilion itself, which was located in the middle of all those stone steles. That was where you could exchange merit points for medicinal plants and pill formulas. Every so often there were also tests for promotion to journeyman apothecary, or occasions when the medicinal pills concocted by various disciples were brought back by the sect. For a variety of reasons, the area was almost always a boiling cauldron of voices. Because of the lively nature of the place, it had eventually become a place to talk about the latest news. Although it had started as an exchange of information about plants and vegetation, eventually, everything in the sect came to be talked about. Big things, small things, even random gossip was all passed among the various disciples. When Bai Xiaochun arrived, the place was packed. Some people were coming and going, but about 30 to 50% of the disciples were standing around talking. There were also disciples lined up to challenge the stone steles and earn a place on the name lists. Bai Xiaochun squeezed through the crowds for a while before finally nearing the second stone stele. Just when he was about to walk up to the stele itself, he happened to overhear 3 outer sect disciples up ahead talking about him. "Did you guys hear? Something really weird has been going on in the sect recently. Someone has been specifically stealing Peak Lord Li's spirit tail chickens. Supposedly, over 100 have already gone missing." "What do you mean 100? I heard that it won't be long before Peak Lord Li doesn't have any chickens left at all. The disciples in charge of the Spirit Tail Chicken Farm have put him on the most wanted list. They even said that when they catch him, they're going to chop him up and feed him to the chickens. Definitely weird. Why are all these prodigies showing up in Fragrant Cloud Peak all of a sudden? First there was the mysterious turtle, and now this mighty chicken bandit." Bai Xiaochun subconsciously hunched his shoulders guiltily. After all, he'd done nothing more than steal a few chickens, right? Who would have known that it would cause such a stir? From the look of it, almost everybody knew. Furthermore, when he realized that the spirit tail chickens actually belonged to Li Qinghu, he got even more scared. "Gee, I didn't steal that many," he thought. He almost felt like he was being framed. Just as he was trying to think of a way to change public opinion about the matter of the mighty chicken bandit, he heard the sound of a commotion from behind him. "Hey girlie, what's with the shoving? Are you late to be reincarnated or something?" "So what if I'm shoving, huh? There's nothing special about you. If you're afraid of crowds, what did you come here for anyway? You should feel lucky to get shoved by a girl like me." "You." For some reason, the voice sounded familiar to Bai Xiaochun. He turned to see a fair, delicate young woman standing there, chest puffed up, hand on her hip as she arrogantly stared down a burly-looking fellow. "Who's Xiaomai?" Bai Xiaochun said, blinking. The young woman was indeed Hu Xiaomai, and when she heard his voice, she turned over and saw him, and the arrogance on her face quickly transformed into joy. "Big Bro Xiaochun, it's you," she exclaimed, turning and hurrying in his direction. Before she even arrived, Bai Xiaochun felt her hot, pure aura brushing past his face. "Hey, chaste little sister," he replied, looking over the vivacious and charming Hu Xiaomai. 1. This exchange involves some wordplay that's impossible to translate directly. Hu Xiaomai's name literally means little sister, so it would be silly to call her little sister little sister. Instead he literally calls her by his own name, although it comes across sounding kind of funny and or flirtatious. Hu Xiaomai's face flushed a bit in response to Bai Xiaochun's words. "Oh, stop it, Big Bro Xiaochun," she said sweetly. "You're such a tease. Just call me Hu Xiaomai." And just like that, the previously bristling young woman was suddenly beautiful and charming. Quite a few surrounding outer sect disciples' eyes began to gleam. As for the burly man she had just been arguing with, He suddenly had goosebumps as he realized what a moody and temperamental girl she was. "Big bro Xiaochun," she gushed. "My big brother left the mountain and hasn't come back, and this is my first time here. Where do I go to get the second volume of Plants and Vegetation?" This really was her first time here. Before, her older brother had helped her handle everything, and now that she was on her own, she didn't know what to do. Luckily, she ran right into Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun smiled as he explained the process to her, going into minute detail. Hu Xiaomai nodded occasionally. By the time he finished explaining, she not only felt that he was a good person, she also felt that he was also extremely knowledgeable. After finishing, Bai Xiaochun looked at Hu Xiaomai to ensure that she had no further questions. Then he pointed over at the first stone stele, the one which tested the first volume of Plants and Vegetation, and calmly said, "See that stone stele? All the people who leave their mark at the top of the list are like chosen in the sect. Any one of those people are the type who will shake the whole cultivation world in the future. I won't go into all the names, just the second one on the list. See that magic bottle insignia? That represents one of the female chosen here on Fragrant Cloud Peak, Zhu Xinqi." "Zhu Xinqi," exclaimed Hu Xiaomai, her eyes shining as she looked over at the magic bottle insignia. "So, that magic bottle stands for the Peak Lord's apprentice, the one with the Plants and Vegetation Spirit Meridian, elder sister Zhu, who's destined to join the inner sect." From the way Hu Xiaomai talked about Zhu Xinqi, it was obvious that she held her in immense esteem. Hearing Bai Xiaochun's explanation about the magic bottle symbol seemed to get her even more excited. Bai Xiaochun continued to explain matters placidly for a bit longer, until he noticed that Hu Xiaomai seemed to be completely fixated on the magic bottle, and wasn't paying attention at all to the turtle which had obviously surpassed it. He felt a bit irritated. After all, hadn't the whole point of his explanation been to get her to notice the turtle? Well, Zhu Xinqi is definitely amazing. That's why she was able to get to second place on the first stone stele of Plants and Vegetation. He made sure to especially emphasize the words second place. Hu Xiaomai gaped for a moment, then frowned. Second place? Who does that turtle above elder sister Zhu represent? It looks so ugly. Hearing this, Bai Xiaochun felt much happier. In his mind, he really did need to educate Hu Xiaomai a little bit more. Putting on a very solemn demeanor, he began to speak in a very earnest tone. "You're wrong there, Xiaomai. Did you know that the cool-looking turtle actually represents the most mysterious, admirable, and transcendent disciple in the entire sect? There are many legends about this person. Whenever he appears, he causes a huge uproar in the sect, and is the center of all attention. Countless disciples follow his every move, envy him and even cheer out loud for him." Really? Hu Xiaomai was a simple and pure girl, and the things Bai Xiaochun was saying caused her to stare in skeptical shock. You should know that 2 months ago, this disciple made a big splash when he destroyed Zhu Xinqi's hopes of having the first place spot on all 9 stone steles. You should know that in his debut appearance, he took the first place spot in the first stone stele. He did it as easily as flipping over his hand. You should know that Zhu Xinqi personally witnessed it happen. For the following 7 days, she neither slept nor rested. She challenged the stone stele over and over again, but even after she did everything she could, she was still in second place, and was forced to concede defeat. You should know that Bai Xiaochun was getting very excited, and in the end, he wanted to reveal himself as the mighty Lord Turtle, but held back at the last moment. The ideal time to reveal his identity was in front of a big crowd. To do so in front of just a single young girl was too much of a waste. "That's all true?" Hu Xiaomai asked, eyes shining as brightly as glittering stars on a moonless night. She was now staring at the little turtle, her flushed face the picture of adoration. "Of course it's true," Bai Xiaochun replied, sighing inwardly. In his mind, he had just done a very good thing, which was helping straighten the course of a child who had strayed off onto the wrong path. Feeling quite a sense of accomplishment, he swished his sleeve and ignored Hu Xiaomai's adoration as he headed toward the second stone stele. He elbowed his way through the crowd, then waited for a bit until he was next in line. He had to wait a while for one of the log cabins to empty up, after which he strode into the door and disappeared. The log cabin looked the same inside as the last one he had been in. After drawing a turtle, his vision swam, and rumbling sounds filled his ears. When he could see again, he was once again in that familiar empty space. No cold voice spoke out this time. Instead, the fragmented plants and vegetation immediately appeared in front of him. Since Bai Xiaochun had been prepared for this, his eyes shone and his hands sped to work. In the blink of an eye, one spirit plant after another was pieced together. Time passed. When the incense stick's worth of time was up, there were less than 5,000 plants left, which was significantly better than the record he had set when he had first been tested for the time it takes an incense stick to burn. Unfortunately, time was up. Bai Xiaochun's vision swam, and when he could see clearly, he was back in the log cabin. Despite having come up slightly short, he was still completely confident in the results. Quickly snatching up the third volume of Plants and Vegetation, he turned and walked out of the door of the log cabin, heart pounding in anticipation. Outside, he could see countless outer sect disciples, many of whom were looking up at the name list. Bai Xiaochun's currently felt very heroic. This time I'm going to shake the entire sect. I'm going to make sure that everyone knows Bai Xiaochun is the famous Lord Turtle. He could envision what it would be like to the object of adoration of tens of thousands of disciples, and could already see the look of shock on Hu Xiaomei's face. When he thought about that, Bai Xiaochun couldn't hold back from laughing loudly. Then he lifted his hand grandly, and was just about to shout out at the top of his lungs that he was the mighty Lord Turtle, when, all of a sudden, a voice rang out from among the outer sect disciples lined up for the trial by fire. Do you think the little turtle who stole Elder Sister Ju's limelight will dare to make an appearance? I doubt it. Elder Sister Ju's fans are crazy. I heard that they've been searching the entire South Bank for the little turtle. They even spread word that as soon as they find him, they'll skin him alive. I heard that too. There are even some inner sect disciples who've joined in on the search. Bai Xiaochun's hand hung in the air as he listened to what the people were saying. Suddenly, his heart began to tremble. When he heard that there were inner sect disciples looking for him too, his forehead began to drip with sweat, and he quickly scratched his head, and then dropped his hand as if nothing at all had happened. Enraged, he wormed his way through the crowd, an anxious, bereaved expression on his face. This is ridiculous. They're pushing things too far. All I did was take first place, right? And now the inner sect disciples are involved? Was it worth it? This time, his expression was real, and not the least bit pretend. Almost as soon as he worked his way into the crowd, someone noticed that the name list on the second stone stele had changed, and immediately, a huge uproar ensued. Chapter 22. Don't worry, elder sister. Look at the second stone stele. That little turtle, it's showed up again. It's in first place again. Just who is this little turtle? Whoever it is has taken 2 first place spots in a row. Now elder sister Ju doesn't have 8 first place spots, she only has 7. The outer sect disciples were in a complete uproar, and countless cries of alarm could be heard ringing about. However, there was one voice in the crowd, a girl, who was crying out excitedly. Go, little turtle, go. That young woman was none other than Hu Xiaomei. Thanks to Bai Xiaochun's earlier prodding, she was now a huge fan of the little turtle. Now that she suddenly saw the little turtle take 2 first place spots, her sense of adoration increased rapidly. In fact, the little turtle had now surpassed Ju Xianxia's place in her heart. The sound of commotion rolled in waves, until everyone was shouting out. After all, the little turtle really was very famous, and now it had once again proven by its actions that whoever it represented was qualified to challenge Ju Xianxia. In fact, there were even some people who were starting to anticipate the scene of the little turtle surpassing Ju Xianxia in all 10 stone steles. Bai Xiaochun was there in the crowd, still a bit depressed, but also secretly felt pleased with himself. He was only a bit regretful that nobody knew who he was. HMPH. One of these days, I'm going to reveal that I'm Lord Turtle in front of an even bigger crowd, he promised himself. Despite his oath, he wasn't ready to give up just yet. He next began to participate in all the shouting. Occasionally, a piercing voice would ring out, drawing the crowd into further commotion. Heavens! Who could it be? I love this guy. The idol of the masses. Lord Turtle is invincible. Thanks to Bai Xiaochun's piercing cries, the outer sect disciples' discussions grew even more feverish. However, it was in that instant that a cold snort rang out, and a figure leapt out of the crowd to stand atop one of the log cabins. It was a young man with a cold, grim expression on his face. His icy voice rang out across the crowd as he said, "I better not find out who that damned little turtle is. If I do, he'll regret ever having stolen the limelight from junior sister Ju." "Same here. The little turtle is probably hiding in the crowd right now. I'm gonna find him." The second voice belonged to that of another young man, who also flew up to the roof of the log cabin and looked around coldly at the crowd. Apparently he had his eye on Bai Xiaochun, not because he thought that he was the little turtle, but because Bai Xiaochun's shouting earlier had been quite blatant and irritated the young man. Soon, more people began to say similar things, 7 or 8 of them. Furthermore, when they unleashed the incredible power of their cultivation bases, it was obvious that the strongest among their number was in the 7th level of qi condensation. These people were obviously fans of Zhu Xinqi, and famous ones at that. Their appearance on the scene caused the crowd to immediately quiet down and stop discussing the matter. However, inwardly, most people were irritated at what was happening, and loathed the young men more than ever. Although everyone liked Zhu Xinqi, she was only a single person. The disciples present weren't stupid, and actually admired someone who could challenge Zhu Xinqi based on individual merit. When Bai Xiaochun found himself the subject of the young man's glare, he didn't feel very confident. However, after considering that there were so many bystanders who the young man didn't dare to offend, Bai Xiaochun glared back with a look that said, "If you dare to do something to me, I'll fight back to the death." At this point in the standoff, a beam of light shot through the air in the direction of the 10,000 Medicines Pavilion, within which a graceful figure could be seen. It was none other than Zhu Xinqi. "It's elder sister Ju. Elder sister Ju is coming." The standoff ended. As soon as the outer sect disciples caught sight of Zhu Xinqi, smiles broke out on their faces. The 7 or 8 young men who were her fans quickly retracted their cultivation bases. Looking completely confident and at ease, they clasped hands to Zhu Xinqi. Zhu Xinqi had come because first, she had already heard about the change to the ranking list on the 2nd stone stele, and second, she had another matter to attend to. After glancing around, she easily guessed what had caused the standoff. She looked over at the 8 fans, her eyes flickering with displeasure and even disgust. "The affairs of Zhu Xinqi have not reached the level where others need to interfere," she said coldly. "Besides, if a new chosen disciple has appeared on Fragrant Cloud Peak, that's something fortunate for the sect as a whole. If you people let something like this happen again, then don't blame your junior sister for losing her temper." Her voice cut with the sharpness of a sword, and the 8 fans looked angry. However, they didn't dare to say a word. Zhu Xinqi looked up at the little turtle on the 2nd stone stele, and her heart filled with an unyielding spirit. She looked out over the crowd and said in a cool, arrogant voice, "Whichever junior brother it was who happened to surpass me on the stone steles for the 1st and 2nd volumes of Plants and Vegetation, if you're still scuttling around in the crowd and don't feel like showing your true face, then so be it. Do as you wish." The surrounding outer sect disciple cheered in response. For most of them, Zhu Xinqi was the true chosen of Fragrant Cloud Peak. Bai Xiaochun stood there in the crowd, musing that Zhu Xinqi definitely deserved to be chosen. Her words just now had been marvelously spoken. He looked up for a moment in thought. He could clearly hear the haughtiness in her words, and what caused him to sigh the most was not that he didn't want to reveal himself. No, it was the killing intent flickering in the eyes of her adoring fans. Zhu Xinqi's expression was calm as she coolly addressed the crowd as a whole. "Ladies and gentlemen, I came here for another reason today, and I hope I can have the support of each and every one of you." Her words instantly got everyone excited, and everyone waited respectfully to see what she had to say next. "The tranquility of Fragrant Cloud Peak has been disturbed of late. My master, Li Qinghu, has had quite a few spirit tail chickens go missing. He is currently out of the sect, and most likely doesn't care too much about the matter. However, as his apprentice, I have a responsibility to do something about it. I sincerely hope that all my fellow disciples will work hard to catch this chicken thief. If anyone manages to apprehend him, I will personally reward that person with a treasured jade pendant." Even as she spoke, Xianxia pulled out a green jade pendant from inside her robe. It let off a gentle glow that made it obvious it was an extraordinary item. This is an item I came across some years ago that contains potent defensive power. As her voice echoed out, the numerous outer sect disciples looked at the jade pendant, and excited expressions could be seen on many of their faces. Some even began to call out various promises. "Don't worry, elder sister Ju. That chicken thief won't have a place to hide. How dare he steal the Peak Lord's chickens? This chicken thief is daring to the extreme. We'll definitely be paying close attention to the matter." Soon, almost everyone in the crowd had cried out assurances that they would help, especially Xianxia's fans, whose eyes burned passionately as they cried out louder than everyone else. Bai Xiaochun stood in the middle of the crowd, somewhat stunned. The surrounding disciples were getting worked up into a frenzy, and he felt like a cold wind was blowing down his spine. However, he still wasn't willing to give up. Even just thinking about the hunger caused from cultivating the undying live forever technique caused sweat to bead up on his forehead. His mind raced as he tried to come up with ideas, and a moment later, his eyes lit up. Suddenly, he slapped his chest and projected his voice through the crowd. "Elder Sister Ju, Bai Xiaochun, will definitely accomplish this mission, even if I have to climb a mountain of blades or swim to the bottom of a vat of boiling oil. I will catch this chicken thief." His piercing voice couldn't be missed, and as he spoke, he shouldered his way forward to stand at the front of the crowd. The way he made his entrance caused numerous eyes to fall upon him, as did the way he loudly slapped his own chest. Even Xianxia's fans felt a bit overwhelmed, and Xianxia herself couldn't help but look over at him. Seeing how much her fellow disciples supported her caused a smile to break out on Xianxia's face. She nodded slightly, and was just turning to leave when all of a sudden, Bai Xiaochun's piercing voice once again weighed down onto the crowd. "Elder Sister Ju, I have a suggestion. Why don't we form a chicken thief task force? If we work together, it will make it much easier to catch this vile traitor, and protect the Peak Lord's spirit tail chickens." From the righteous tone of Bai Xiaochun's voice, it seemed that he was willing to spare no effort to accomplish the mission set forth by Elder Sister Ju. Xianxia stared in shock. As for the rest of the crowd, quite a few of them thought it was a good idea and began to voice their approval. "Good idea," someone said. "However, cultivation is still our main priority, so the matter must be voluntary." Xianxia looked over at Bai Xiaochun once more. In her opinion, this junior brother of hers was not only fair and pure, he seemed inherently charming. Furthermore, he appeared to be piously devoted to her, which left her with a very favorable impression. Nodding, she gave him a smile. "Since the idea was put forth by this zealous junior brother, I suggest that he form the chicken thief task force. Take these 10 silk bands to use as tokens of identification for the task force members." With that, she produced 10 bands of blue silk from within her bag of holding. With the wave of a hand, she sent them flying toward Bai Xiaochun, where they landed in his hand. "Don't worry, elder sister, I'll handle everything." He stood there with silk bands in hand, looking prouder than ever. In fact, he looked like he would yield to no one when it came to the Peak Lord's chickens, and would even be willing to sacrifice his life for the cause. Xianxia's eyes glowed with admiration, and she couldn't help but muse that there were very few responsible junior brothers like this in the sect. Taking one last look at Bai Xiaochun's charming appearance, she turned and left. Xianxia's fans were not happy to suddenly see her and Bai Xiaochun on good terms. Furthermore, they also regretted not winning her favor in such a fawning way themselves. After Xianxia left, the disciples from the Spirit Fowl Farm also left, thanking the crowd profusely in the process. They especially expressed thanks to Bai Xiaochun, who stood there, chest puffed up as he cursed the chicken thief. Then, he organized the chicken thief task force, filling it with other disciples whose cultivation bases did not exceed his. Finally, Bai Xiaochun hurried away, wiping the sweat from his brow. Sighing, he thought, "That was a close one. I almost lost access to my food source. It's a good thing you're so clever and quick-witted, Bai Xiaochun." Heh. Having reached this point in his train of thought, Bai Xiaochun felt very pleased with himself. Humming a little tune, he headed once again in the direction of his courtyard residence. Back in the courtyard, the spirit winter bamboo in the spirit field was growing frighteningly high. It was now 3 meters high, thicker than his calf, and shocking in appearance. That night, when dark clouds filled the sky and everything was pitch black, Bai Xiaochun sat there with his eyes wide open, licking his lips. The night is dark, and I'm feeling hungry yet again. Chapter 23. The Chicken Thieving Fiend. It was late at night, and Fragrant Cloud Peak was blanketed in darkness. If you held your hand out in front of you, you wouldn't even be able to see your fingers. Other than the whispering wind, everything was peaceful and quiet. Not even a peep could be heard coming from the birds and beasts. Bai Xiaochun hurried through the darkness, Xianxia's silk band tied around his arm, following the path that led to one of the spirit tail chicken farms. As he sped along, he would occasionally duck into a nearby thicket and proceed along in concealment. Soon, the spirit tail chicken farm came into view up ahead. Most of the chickens were asleep, although a few were walking about to and fro. There was even one chicken in particular which was strolling in Bai Xiaochun's direction. He crouched there in the thicket, licking his lips until the spirit tail chicken neared the fence. Just as he was pulling out his bamboo cicada, his heart flip-flopped, and a look of vigilance filled his eyes. At the same time, shouting could be heard from behind him as numerous figures charged toward him through the night. They even had flame globes which cast radiant light out into the night. Damned chicken thief! Finally you show your face. We've been waiting for you here for days. Now we've got you surrounded, let's see how you try to escape. As the cries echoed out, 8 figures closed in on Bai Xiaochun, completely surrounding him. These were the disciples in charge of taking care of the chickens. Even after days of painstakingly laying in wait, they had never imagined that today would be the day when everything paid off. Their hearts were filled with righteous order as they prepared to immediately execute justice upon the chicken thief. When their words rang out, Bai Xiaochun was initially very nervous. But then he looked up in thought for a moment and let out a cold snort. "Shut up, you people," he said. "Keep it down." His words were spoken without the slightest politeness, as if justice were on his side. He did nothing to attempt to flee, but instead, arrogantly rose to his feet, making sure that the silk band on his arm was clearly visible. "See that?" he asked. "I'm the captain of the Chicken Thief Task Force." Brow furrowed, he looked around at the 8 disciples, clearly displeased. This sudden development caused the 8 interlopers to stare in shock. Some of these disciples had seen Bai Xiaochun earlier in the day. After examining him a bit closer, they started to hesitate. One of the disciples seemed a bit skeptical about the situation. "Oh, it's junior brother Bai. Well, what are you doing here so late at night, huh?" His words caused the other disciples to stare suspiciously at Bai Xiaochun. Flicking his sleeve and frowning, Bai Xiaochun angrily said, "Elder sister Ju herself asked me to be the captain of the Chicken Thief Task Force, so of course I'll do everything in my power to catch the chicken thief. I've even given up my nightly cultivation routine to come here and lay in wait. However, considering how much of a racket you people are making, I'm sure the chicken thief has long since fled." He really did look like the picture of someone trying to catch a thief. The chicken farm disciples exchanged dismayed glances, and some of them even looked a bit embarrassed. As for the most suspicious of the disciples, his expression softened a bit, although he still didn't seem totally convinced. Seeing that their suspicions hadn't been completely dispelled, Bai Xiaochun gave a cold harumph and, before anyone could ask any more questions, he decided to seize the initiative and put the onus on them. "No wonder you people have lost so many spirit tail chickens. You're completely negligent. Look over there, your fence is even broken." He pointed over to a spot where there really was a hole in the fence, although it wasn't very obvious. It had actually been punched into the fence by a struggling spirit tail chicken that he had been in the process of stealing a while back. The chicken farm disciples looked in the direction that Bai Xiaochun was pointing, and when they saw the hole, expressions of shock appeared on their faces. It was true that they really hadn't paid much attention to tiny details like this in the past. "And look at that spirit tail chicken. How did you plan to protect it after it walked all the way over here?" Bai Xiaochun seemed to be getting more and more angry, and was even raising his voice, causing the chicken farm disciples' faces to flush with shame. "According to my investigation, this spot right here is the most remote location on the chicken farm. You should be guarding this place especially closely. But look, I was here for ages before any of you people showed up. The more Bai Xiaochun talked, the angrier he got. In the end, he let out a long sigh. How do you people expect to catch a thief like this, huh? Based on my experience catching thieves, if my speculations are correct, then this is the location in which the most chickens were taken. As soon as the words left his mouth, the chicken farm disciples began to tremble inwardly. Exchanging glances, they saw the shock in each other's eyes. Based on the information they had, this was indeed the location where they had lost the most chickens. In fact, that was the reason why they had decided to stand guard here. Bai Xiaochun had hit the nail square on the head, causing the entire group to look at him with increasing admiration. Even the disciple who had been the most suspicious of him now felt that he had been in the wrong. First he thought about how Bai Xiaochun had sacrificed his cultivation time to come catch the thief, and then he remembered how enthusiastic and duty-bound he had seemed earlier in the day. Finally, the disciple took a deep breath, clasped hands, and bowed deeply. Junior brother Bai, please don't be too deeply offended at what I said earlier. Many thanks for your sacrifice. We will repair this spot immediately, and will definitely increase the guard in this area. Everyone else clasped hands as well, thinking about how rare it was to find someone as zealous as Bai Xiaochun. He was obviously trying to help them, and that made them even more sorry for their impulsiveness earlier. Bai Xiaochun sighed, then earnestly offered them a few more pieces of advice before turning to leave. As he walked off, the 8 disciples once again clasped hands and bowed, completely moved by what he had just done. Junior brother Bai is such a good guy. As soon as Bai Xiaochun was out of sight, a cold wind brushed against his back, and he realized that he was sweating profusely from how close of a call it had been. However, his stomach was still grumbling, so he decided to go to the other 2 chicken farms to see if there was still a chance to make a move. He strolled down the mountain path, looking around cautiously as he went along to make sure he wasn't being followed. His expression was grave as he pondered how to go about stealing a chicken from the next chicken farm. As the wind blew, it fluttered the silk band tied around his arm. Meanwhile, up in dark night air, a woman stood on a blue flying silk, completely undetectable to everyone down below as she examined the situation on this part of Fragrant Cloud Peak. Suddenly, her expression flickered as she caught sight of Bai Xiaochun walking along, looking around vigilantly. Her eyes gradually began to glow with praise. This little junior brother really takes his responsibilities seriously. Naturally, that woman was Xianxia, who had been inspecting the area. Earlier, there had been lots of disciples on patrol, but as the night wore on, most of them had gone back to practice cultivation. Bai Xiaochun was the only one out and about actually trying to catch the thief. With him around, the chicken thief will definitely have to rein things in. Xianxia looked away and then headed back to her immortal's cave, feeling much better about the situation. 2 hours later, Bai Xiaochun had circled back around to his courtyard residence. Once inside, he slapped his bag of holding to produce 2 spirit tail chickens. Chuckling to himself, he plucked them and tossed them into the wok, soon after which, a fragrant aroma filled the air, causing him to salivate. Then, he didn't even wait for them to cool before wolfing them down ravenously. Finally, he burped, patted his belly, and then laid back, looking so content he almost seemed drunk. Another month passed, during which time Bai Xiaochun conscientiously went out at night, looking very solemn as he appeared randomly to inspect the various chicken farms. Despite that, the chickens still continued to go missing. They seemingly disappeared without a trace, which was a deep mystery. The chicken farm disciples were increasingly feeling as if they had lost all faith. Filled with passion, they continuously swore oaths to not give up until the chicken thief was incarcerated. Bai Xiaochun seemed to be taking things even more seriously than them. He was completely devoted to defending the chicken farms, as if he wasn't even willing to rest until the thief was apprehended. There was even one occasion in which he stood guard at one chicken farm for 4 days and 4 nights. The hard work being put in seemed to put a lot of pressure on the chicken thief, and the rate of thievery seemed to have been reduced. However, the thief didn't disappear altogether. Eventually, nearly half of the spirit tail chickens on Fragrant Cloud Peak were now gone, and the ones left behind were mostly juveniles. In the end, even the chicken farm disciples began berating themselves, and couldn't help but sigh emotionally. They were of the opinion that if the rest of the chicken thief task force was as conscientious as junior brother Bai, then the chicken thief would definitely have been caught already. Xianxia was getting particularly anxious. One afternoon when Bai Xiaochun was sitting cross-legged at one of the chicken farms, looking around vigilantly, a blue flying silk descended from above, upon which was Xianxia. After seeing who it was, Bai Xiaochun charmingly called out, "Elder sister Ju." When Xianxia's beautiful eyes fell upon Bai Xiaochun, she smiled and said, "Hard at work, I see, junior brother Bai." Soon, other disciples in the area were rushing up, clustering around Xianxia and also Bai Xiaochun. "Ladies and gentlemen, I offer my profound thanks for your assistance recently," she said softly. "I am truly grateful. However, the chicken thief is still as brazen as ever. Therefore, I will join you to stand guard." After looking around at the group, she frowned slightly and continued, "I'm wondering if perhaps the chicken thief has a connection to my master. Otherwise, wouldn't he steal spirit tail chicken from the other mountain peaks too? Instead, he seems to be targeting only my master's chickens." When Bai Xiaochun heard that, his eyes began to shine brightly, and he very nearly slapped his thigh. What Xianxia said made a lot of sense, and as he thought about it, he couldn't help but look off in the direction of Violet Cauldron Peak. Slowly, his eyes narrowed to cover over the wily glint deep therein. Now that Xianxia had shown herself, many of her admirers also began to flock to the area. Soon, vast crowds had gathered at Fragrant Cloud Peak Spirit Tail Chicken Farms. The chicken thief was now incapable of doing anything, and in the following days, not a single spirit tail chicken was lost. Even still, the mysterious and unfathomable chicken thief was already completely famous. In fact, many people had taken to calling him the chicken thieving fiend. He had caused such a stir among the disciples that he was considered to stand alongside the owner of the Little Turtle as one of the most mysterious figures on Fragrant Cloud Peak. In fact, even the outer sect disciples on Green Crest Peak and Violet Cauldron Peak had heard about him. Now that the chicken thief had apparently vanished, Xianxia felt a lot better. Although he had never been apprehended, when she thought about how hard Bai Xiaochun had worked over the past month or more, she ended up rewarding him with the jade pendant anyway, as a form of encouragement. When the matter finally came to an end, Bai Xiaochun's earnestness and devotion had caused quite a few fellow outer sect disciples to notice how pure, charming, and dedicated he was. Chapter 24. Who Are You? Bai Xiaochun sat in his courtyard on Fragrant Cloud Peak, looking at the jade pendant sitting there in his hand. After activating it with some spiritual energy, the pendant began to glow with a soft, green light that surrounded his body. Next, he performed an incantation gesture with his left hand, causing his wooden sword to appear. It circled around in the air and then shot back toward Bai Xiaochun. However, as soon as it hit the green light, it was as if it had suddenly run into a patch of water, causing it to slow down significantly. "What a treasure," he murmured, putting the wooden sword away and clasping the jade pendant in his hand, feeling a little embarrassed. "Ah well, it doesn't matter. Li Qinghu is Xianxia's master, but he's my mentor too. In fact, considering our relationship, I should probably call him uncle." Clearing his throat, Bai Xiaochun put the jade pendant away, then stood up and stretched lazily. After eating more than half of Li Qinghu's chickens, his undying live forever technique was progressing by leaps and bounds. It was now more than 70% complete. Of course, the spirit tail chickens replenished his vital energy, not his spiritual energy. However, even though his cultivation base was still at the 4th level of qi condensation, it had made some progress, and was more refined than before. He buried all the chicken bones in the spirit soil, which was now filled with so much spiritual energy that it bordered on ridiculous. As for his spirit winter bamboo, it was now more than 2 meters tall, and no longer purely emerald green. Dark dots had begun to appear within the green. Most important of all were the spirit tails, which could produce 3-colored flames. Bai Xiaochun had been collecting them, and now had several hundred. Whenever he thought about the 3-colored flames that the spirit tails could produce, his heart filled with anticipation. "I'm in no hurry with my cultivation base. As long as I can get enough medicinal pills, I can do a 3-fold spirit enhancement on them and advance with flying speed. The most important thing to do is make some progress with my undying skin." Almost as soon as the thought entered his mind, Bai Xiaochun's stomach started to grumble. At first he looked in the direction of Fragrant Cloud Peak's chicken farms, but then he turned toward Violet Cauldron Peak. Eldest brother is on Violet Cauldron Peak. I wonder how he's been doing lately. Thinking about all the things that had happened back in the ovens, he raced out of his courtyard, down the mountain, and toward Violet Cauldron Peak. Of the 3 mountains on the south bank of the Spirit Stream sect, Green Crest Peak focused on swords, Fragrant Cloud Peak concentrated on spirit medicine, and Violet Cauldron Peak excelled in magical techniques and spirit enhancement. Furthermore, the South Bank's most fundamental technique, the Violet Chi Cauldron Control Art, actually came from Violet Cauldron Peak. Bai Xiaochun walked along the path toward Violet Cauldron Peak, and by the time he got there, evening was falling. He looked up at the mountain, which was wreathed in clouds and mist. High up in the air, he was just barely able to make out tiny shadows flitting around in beams of prismatic light. He sighed. I wonder when I'll be able to get some kind of flying treasure, and then do something like that. Then my world will really open up, and I'll actually be on the path to living forever. Eyes gleaming with anticipation, he began to ascend Violet Cauldron Peak. Although he wasn't a disciple of Violet Cauldron Peak, as an outer sect disciple, he was qualified to go to any of the various mountains. As he walked along, he asked some people about where Zhong Dahai lived. Thanks to his charming manner, he almost immediately got an answer, and quickly hurried off in the direction indicated. Big Fatty Zhong's residence was located on a different part of the mountain compared to the location of Bai Xiaochun's place on Fragrant Cloud Peak. It was on the sunny side of the mountain, where there was stronger spiritual energy. There weren't many residences here, they were sprinkled about like stars in the night sky, apparently in some prescribed pattern. Although it was evening, and the light wasn't very clear, it was still possible to see the swirling mists and abundant spirit plants, all of which gave the place a celestial feeling. Taking a deep breath, Bai Xiaochun looked around enviously. Eldest brother really does have connections in the sect. I can't believe he got a place like this. It's way better than mine. It only took a bit of looking to find Big Fatty Zhong's residence. The courtyard was filled with weeds, as if no one had tended to it for ages. Bai Xiaochun gaped in shock, then knocked on the main gate. However, there was no response. Am I in the wrong place? He thought. Even as he stood there, shocked, the front door of the building inside the courtyard slowly creaked open, and an emaciated figure appeared, holding a flying sword in his right hand. Dim silver light flickered around his left hand as he trudged out. Looking exhausted, then languidly said, "Who is it?" Even as the words left the man's mouth, he suddenly saw Bai Xiaochun standing there across the courtyard, and a tremor ran through him. A look of delight appeared on his face, almost as if he had just caught sight of a blood relative. Suddenly, he flew forward, pushed the main gate open, and then stood there looking at Bai Xiaochun. Then he laughed loudly and said, "Ninth junior brother. Who are you?" Bai Xiaochun responded, backing up, his eyes wide. Although this person seemed familiar for some reason, Bai Xiaochun couldn't identify him at all. He had average features, and was very skinny. Although he couldn't be described as being only skin and bones, he was almost to that point. His eyes shone with vigor, and yet were sunken in. From the ripples of his cultivation base, he seemed to be in the great circle of the 4th level of qi condensation. When the emaciated young man saw Bai Xiaochun's expression, he looked like he was about to start crying. "Ninth Fatty, it's me, Big Fatty," he said. Face filled with intense grief, he went on to say, "Ninth Fatty, you have no idea how much I've suffered during the past year. My master is so demanding. As soon as I got here, she told me she doesn't like fatties, and that I had to go hungry for half a year. Half a year, Ninth Fatty. Do you know what I ended up looking like after half a year? It took me forever just to gain this much weight back." This emaciated young man was none other than Big Fatty Zhong, who was now standing there weeping. Bai Xiaochun looked him over carefully. Having heard the story, and confirmed that he really was his eldest brother, Bai Xiaochun's jaw dropped. The eldest brother he remembered, and this person standing in front of him, looked like 2 completely different people. "Is there some grudge between you and your master?" Bai Xiaochun asked sympathetically. "That old shrew. I." Big Fatty Zhong said a few words, but then shivered and didn't dare to continue. Pulling Bai Xiaochun into his courtyard, he said, "Ninth junior brother, I miss the ovens. Nobody can survive in a place like this. I've never been full the entire time I've been here, plus there's no way for me to make any money. I'm so hungry." He then proceeded to tell Bai Xiaochun everything that had happened to him from the moment he had arrived. As Bai Xiaochun listened to the bitter tale, he suddenly realized that his decision to start stealing chickens was definitely the right thing to do. He looked at Big Fatty Zhong's emaciated frame, then sighed and patted his bony shoulder. "Since you're in some trouble, elder brother, then junior brother will naturally help. Just wait here for the time it takes an incense stick to burn. I'll be right back." Big Fatty Zhong gaped in shock as Bai Xiaochun turned and left the courtyard. On his way up the mountain, Bai Xiaochun had already taken note of where Violet Cauldron Peak's Spirit Tail chicken farms were located. Taking advantage of the darkness of night, he suddenly vanished. Big Fatty Zhong had no idea what was going on, nor any clue as to what Bai Xiaochun might be doing. He waited there at his front gate for the time it takes an incense stick to burn, after which Bai Xiaochun returned, carrying a Spirit Tail chicken in each hand. When Big Fatty Zhong saw the Spirit Tail chickens, his eyes went wide. Before he could say anything, though, Bai Xiaochun hustled him into the courtyard. Ignoring Big Fatty Zhong, Bai Xiaochun expertly produced a wok, boiled some water, plucked the chickens and tossed them in. With that, he dusted off his sleeves, lifted his chin and looked at Big Fatty Zhong. Big Fatty Zhong was panting, and his eyes were wide. He pointed at the chickens in the wok, and then back at Bai Xiaochun, and a look of disbelief crept up on his face. "Why you? Don't tell me that you are the chicken-thieving fiend of Fragrant Cloud Peak." Bai Xiaochun chuckled. Then, as if he were very familiar with the process, placed his hand onto the wok and sent out some spiritual energy to ensure that the chicken meat was perfectly tender. Soon, a fragrant aroma wafted out. Bai Xiaochun reached in, pulled out a chicken leg, and then handed it to Big Fatty Zhong. "Eat," he said, imitating the way Big Fatty Zhong had handed him the magical mushroom back when he had first joined the ovens. Big Fatty Zhong swallowed a few times as he stared at the chicken leg. Finally, he grabbed it and wolfed it down. From that point on, it wasn't necessary for Bai Xiaochun to say anything. Big Fatty Zhong flew over to the wok and virtually dunked his face in. The two chickens were rapidly consumed down to the bones, except that he couldn't stop there. Crunching sounds could be heard as he chomped them down too. Finally, he smacked his belly, and laid back, looking nearly drunk with contentment. Then he and Bai Xiaochun exchanged a look and started laughing. "Ninth Fatty, you're incredible," he said, looking very proud. "You really were paying attention back in the ovens. I never would have imagined that Fragrant Cloud Peak's illustrious chicken-thieving fiend would turn out to be my bro. Cultivation is innately a heaven-defying thing. As cultivators, it's only natural to contend with the heavens, and fight with men. You have to rely on yourself. What do a few Spirit Tail chickens count for?" Bai Xiaochun waved his hand, but was unable to conceal how pleased he was with himself. He had been keeping his identity a secret for far too long now. Being able to share it, and then see the look on Big Fatty Zhong's face, made him feel wonderful. The true pity is that I've eaten so many Spirit Tail chickens on Fragrant Cloud Peak that only the chicks are left. They don't taste very good, otherwise I'd invite you to live with me over there, and we could eat our fill every day. You would definitely gain all your weight back." Bai Xiaochun sighed. When Big Fatty Zhong heard that, his eyes gleamed, and he immediately crawled to his feet. Violet Cauldron Peak has them too. The west, south, and north faces of the mountains all do. They're guarded by 2 shifts a day, each shift manned by 7 disciples. Big Fatty Zhong went on to explain in further detail. When he was finished, he found Bai Xiaochun looking at him with a strange expression. Big Fatty Zhong cleared his throat and said, "After I heard about the chicken-thieving fiend, I decided to try to do the same thing as him. Unfortunately, the chickens are too hard to steal. As soon as you get close, they start making noise. Not only did I not even come close to stealing a chicken, I almost got caught." Big Fatty Zhong seemed a bit embarrassed about the whole thing. Bai Xiaochun laughed, then edged closer to Big Fatty Zhong and began to whisper something. Gradually, Big Fatty Zhong's eyes began to glow brighter and brighter, and he was even panting. Then Bai Xiaochun pulled out his bamboo cicada, and after a moment wide smiles covered their faces and they began to chuckle. Soon, laughter rang out from within the courtyard, and it sounded terrifying. From that day on, Bai Xiaochun began to visit Big Fatty Zhong more often, and gradually, the spirit tail chickens from Violet Cauldron Peak began to go missing. Every night, two great chicken bandits struck. One did the stealing, the other stood watch. Soon, the disciples of Violet Cauldron Peak were in an uproar, and everyone was discussing the matter. Did you hear? The chicken thieving fiend from Fragrant Cloud Peak has set his eyes on Violet Cauldron Peak. I actually saw it happen. The chicken thieving fiend isn't a person, it's a team of two. When the news got back to Fragrant Cloud Peak, the outer sect disciples there all took deep breaths and looked sympathetically in the direction of Violet Cauldron Peak. So the chicken thieving fiend has learned to be balanced. He's finally not stealing chickens from our Fragrant Cloud Peak. Chapter 25. Invincible Iron Skin. It got to the point that, a month later, the rumors were flying like crazy. Even the Shu Meixiang, the peak lord of Violet Cauldron Peak, who was none other than the old shrew Big Fatty Zhong had mentioned, caught wind of what was happening. Bai Xiaochun and Big Fatty Zhong had no choice but to cease their activities. After discussing the matter together, they decided to go rescue Third Girly Hay. Therefore, the two of them went to Green Crest Peak. Third Girly Hay was a bit thinner, but not conspicuously. However, she now emanated a somewhat seductive air, which left Bai Xiaochun and Big Fatty Zhong virtually speechless. They barely even recognized her. Her previously swarthy face even looked somewhat elegant. One could easily imagine how, if she continued to lose weight, she would eventually turn into a true beauty. However, once she heard about the spirit tail chickens, her eyes began to shine. From then on, the spirit tail chickens on Green Crest Peak began to go missing. By now, the chicken thieving fiend was completely famous on the South Bank. It was virtually impossible to find an outer sect disciple who hadn't heard of him, and even the servants knew the name. Before long, the elders took note of the matter. Although the chicken thieving fiend eventually vanished without a trace, never to reappear again, Third Girly Hay and Big Fatty Zhong both visibly regained a lot of weight. Although they weren't as impressive as they had been in the past, they were still much sturdier. As for Bai Xiaochun, he finally finished 81 cycles, at long last sating his hunger. It was at that point that the three of them gave up on stealing chickens. Although the 81 cycles of the Undying Live Forever technique hadn't been performed in succession, but rather built up over time, the result was absolutely the same. On one particular day, Bai Xiaochun sat in his courtyard in Fragrant Cloud Peak, his expression solemn. His skin was emanating iron-colored pulses, and even glowed with a flickering black light. An incredible aura radiated off of him, making him seem savage and wild. He had endured 81 days of pain and then 81 days of hunger. That combination transformed into a shocking power that erupted up inside of Bai Xiaochun, over and over again. Each eruption was filled with boundless vital energy, which then poured into Bai Xiaochun's skin, causing it to become increasingly iron-colored. The black glow grew more blinding, and the toughness of his skin increased exponentially. Eventually, it reached the point that if anyone had happened to catch sight of him standing there, they would think they were looking at an iron statue, and not a flesh and blood human. His mind was reeling as the bursts of energy continued. After the 19th time, he realized that they weren't slowing down at all, but were actually increasing in intensity. Bai Xiaochun didn't move a muscle, and didn't even seem to be breathing. However, if you looked closely, you would see that all of the pores on his body were dilated as he silently absorbed the energy of heaven and earth in the area. After 81 eruptions, my undying skin will reach the initial stage of completion, and I'll be in the iron skin stage. The Undying Live Forever technique's mnemonic floated in Bai Xiaochun's mind, and a firm and unswerving expression could be seen on his face. All of his hard work over the past year, including enduring all the pain and hunger, had all been for this moment. Rumble. The vital energy inside of him erupted out once more, and the iron color of his skin deepened. Every time the vital energy poured into the flesh of his skin, it was as if it were being tempered by the strikes of thousands of forge hammers. As of this moment, he pulsed with energy, like a divine weapon in the forging process. Rumble. 28 times, 30 times, 40 times, 48 times. Time passed. 3 days later, Bai Xiaochun remained in the exact same spot. Although no bystander would be able to hear anything, to him, it sounded like endless thunder was booming in his ears. However, it was at this point that the vital energy inside of him erupted out for the 49th time. Suddenly, the power redoubled, and a tremor ran through him. At the same time, tiny cracks began to appear on his skin, as if it couldn't endure any longer. Although the cracks were few, as soon as they appeared, Bai Xiaochun's heart sank. So, the signs of impending death have finally appeared. Bai Xiaochun frowned. The introduction to the Undying Live Forever technique mentioned cracks like this. During the process of reaching the initial stage of success, they were guaranteed to show up. How long each individual could hold on would depend on their willpower, and would end up determining the quality of the future undying skin. Even if you didn't endure for very long at all, you could still successfully cultivate the undying skin. However, the quality would naturally fall short of perfect. If you could hold on through all 81 eruptions of vital energy, then you could reach a state of perfect flawlessness. Bai Xiaochun's eyes gleamed with determination for a moment before he closed them once more. Rumbling explosions continued to erupt inside of him. 50 times, 60 times, 70 times. Unexpectedly, one breath took him through 5 whole days, during which he endured all the way past 70. The cracks covering him were so numerous that his skin almost looked like a turtle's. In many places, the cracks had joined together, making him resemble a broken flower vase that had been pieced back together. He looked like he might shatter at any moment. Only 7 more times, he thought, his eyes completely bloodshot. Panting, he clenched his jaw, and that vicious streak in his personality surged to life. 74 times. 77 times. 79 times. Bai Xiaochun threw his head back and roared, although it wasn't very loud of a roar, more like a muffled grunt. His body trembled as he endured yet another eruption, reaching a total of 80. The vital energy poured into his skin which, although it was covered with cracks, was like iron. Anyone who saw it would surely be shocked. Last one, he said. As the final burst of vital energy surged out, he suddenly extended his right hand and smashed it down toward the ground. A boom rang out, and a huge crater appeared. The final blast of vital energy erupted as everything reached a conclusion. Endless amounts of vital energy poured into his skin, causing the cracks to immediately vanish, leaving him looking sleek and smooth. The black glow vanished, and he looked just as fair and pure as before. However, now his skin was far tougher than ordinary skin, although nobody could tell that by looking at him. Bai Xiaochun stood there panting for a moment before looking up at the crater he had just blasted into the ground. Then he looked at his skin, and his expression brightened. Finally, he threw his head back and laughed uproariously. He waved his right hand, causing his wooden sword to fly out, which then transformed into a black beam that slashed at his forearm. As soon as it hit, a metallic clang rang out, and the wooden sword unexpectedly flew backward. As for his arm, it felt almost like a mosquito had bitten him. When he examined the point of impact, his skin wasn't harmed at all. "Undying skin!" he cried, unable to contain his joy. It must be stated that his wooden sword was no ordinary magical item. It had received a twofold spirit enhancement. Although it was made from ordinary materials, because of the spirit enhancement, it could be considered a magical item worthy of a chosen. Despite that, though, it hadn't hurt him at all. Bai Xiaochun suddenly flickered into motion, shooting forward. A buzzing sound could be heard as he suddenly appeared more than 30 meters away. He could now move many times faster than before, leaving him completely delighted. As for the power he could unleash, a mere look at the crater in the ground revealed that it was also many times greater than before. Furthermore, this was only the initial stage of success of the undying skin. Although it couldn't be said that he had completely cast off his mortal body, he was definitely vastly different than before. With defensive power like this, he thought, I, Bai Xiaochun, am going to be much safer on the path to living forever. Bai Xiaochun was extremely pleased with himself. Next, he examined his cultivation base and saw that he had also made quite a bit of progress in that aspect as well. He was now in the great circle of the 4th level of qi condensation. Furthermore, it was not the ordinary great circle. Because of how the spiritual energy had been compressed inside of him, its quality was far beyond compare to an ordinary cultivator of the same stage as himself. Feeling very satisfied, he sped a few laps around the courtyard, then suddenly stopped, eyes gleaming. Lifting his right hand out in front of him, he held his thumb and forefinger out in a U shape. Then he pinched them together, causing a black glow to appear on them. Although nothing happened, cracking sounds could be heard in the air up ahead of him. Eyes widening, he turned and dashed over to a nearby rock, where he once again caused the black light to flash from his 2 fingers. As soon as he pinched the fingers together, cracking sounds could be heard as the rock exploded like a piece of tofu. He flickered into motion again, appeared next to the spirit winter bamboo, which was now more than 9 meters tall. After identifying the toughest of the bamboo stalks, he pinched his fingers together. A boom could be heard as the bamboo shattered. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath and sank down to the ground, where he looked down at his 2 fingers, and the black glow which was slowly fading away from them. After a bit of time passed, he let out a long breath. So, that's the throat-crushing grasp, huh? He murmured quietly. That was one of the secret magics of the undying live forever technique, something that could only be unleashed after reaching the first stage of initial success. Supposedly, it could double one's power, and could not be countered. Just now, Bai Xiaochun had only used about 50% of his full power. He couldn't even imagine how powerful and terrifying the secret magic would be if he unleashed its full power. From what Bai Xiaochun could tell, a secret magic like that should be used for killing people. After a moment of silent thought, he came to the conclusion that although it was brutal, he still needed to practice it in earnest. Therefore, he began to zip back and forth in his courtyard, causing a black flashing light and cracking sounds to echo out. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, half a month went by. During that time, Bai Xiaochun never left his courtyard. He stayed there practicing the entire time. Naturally, he had no way of knowing that after months of being away, Li Qinghu had finally returned to the Spirit Stream sect, and was currently flying through the air atop a beam of green light, heading directly toward Fragrant Cloud Peak. After he landed, and before he could even rest, 2 beams of light shot out from Green Crest Peak and Violet Cauldron Peak and headed in his direction. Soon, he could make out the figure of an old man in one of the beams of light. He looked like a sharp, unsheathed sword, and emanated the unique pressure of a Foundation establishment cultivator. In the other beam of light was graceful woman. She looked like a natural beauty, exquisite despite the strange expression on her face. It almost looked like she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Together with the old man, she alighted on the mountain peak. These 2 were the peak lords of Green Crest Peak and Violet Cauldron Peak respectively. After arriving at Fragrant Cloud Peak, they had a private discussion with Li Qinghu, then left. Li Qinghu stood atop Fragrant Cloud Peak, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Finally, he sent out some divine scents, focusing it on the 3 spirit tail chicken farms in their various locations on the mountain. When he saw that the only things left were chicks, he similarly looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sighing, he waved his sleeve and began to walk down the mountain. From the direction he took, it seemed he was heading directly toward Bai Xiaochun's courtyard residence.